from season 4, episode 8 may have quietly revealed something important about how FROMVILLE actually works. Because after watching this episode, I'm starting to wonder if we've been looking at the town the wrong way. We tend to think of FROMVILLE as a place, as a curse, but several clues in this episode suggest it may be something much more organized than that. We see clues involving Ethan, the man in yellow, Fatima's connection to Smiley, and even something as seemingly random as Victor's peaches. Now, individually, they don't seem connected, but when you step back and look at the bigger picture, they all point towards the same question. Is FROMVILLE creating chaos, or is it following a design? So today, I'm breaking down 5 clues you probably missed that may tell us how the system really works. And later, I'll be discussing a few unanswered questions that could end up being just as important as the clues themselves. But before we get started, let me introduce myself if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then welcome back. My name is Brandi, and I realize that you could be on any channel in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really do appreciate that. So please go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show breakdowns. Clue number 1 is Ethan's acceptance of his role. We see a scene in this episode where Ethan is in his room drawing pictures of everyone in town, and he tells Tabitha that Victor always says, "The pictures remember."
So when everyone dies, I'm here by myself. I don't want to forget anymore.
And note, he doesn't say if everyone dies, he says when. Ever since season 1, it seems like Ethan has viewed FROMVILLE through the lens of his storybooks. In Ethan's stories, there are quests, there are rules, and there are roles. And that's why Ethan's reaction doesn't feel so strange to me when Victor starts teaching Ethan the same survival lessons that the boy in white taught him after everyone died. Ethan, he doesn't panic. He doesn't insist that everyone will survive. He doesn't even shed a single tear. Instead, he seems oddly at peace with the possibility that all of his loved ones around him may die and he'll be left behind alone. Almost as if in his mind, that's simply the next chapter of the story. And that scene really solidified it for me that Ethan understands something the adults do not. Because if FROMVILLE is a system, which I've been saying all along, based off of Ethan's books, then every cycle may require certain roles to be filled. A protector, a guide, a memory keeper, and Ethan may have already accepted the role the story has chosen for him. Not because he wants it, but because that's just how the story goes. So Ethan may already have more answers than anyone realizes. And it's not because he's seeing visions or hearing voices, but it's because he's been interpreting FROMVILLE through the lens of the Chronicle since the day he arrived. And this isn't the first time we've seen Ethan strangely calm during conversations that should terrify him. And his confidence may be one of the biggest clues that everyone around him is ignoring, especially Tabitha. And speaking of people who seem to know more than they are saying, clue number 2 is the man in yellow's actions. Now, one of the biggest clues in episode 8 isn't what the man in yellow says, it's how much effort he goes through to say it. Think about everything that had to happen just for the man in yellow to have this conversation with Tabitha. Sophia had to steal the yellow suit from Boyd's office to shape-shift back into the man in yellow. He actually impersonated Thomas over the phone, and then he stole Ethan's drawings and covers the RV with them. And that's a lot of work for someone who supposedly just wants to offer a warning. And honestly, Ethan's drawings may be a clue all by themselves, because the phone call was enough to get Tabitha to the RV, so the man in yellow, he didn't really need the drawings there too, which means they must have been part of the message. And that must mean that those drawings matter. Or maybe he was simply using the thing Tabitha cares about most to make sure she listened. But either way, the drawings weren't random. And then comes the warning. The man in yellow tells Tabitha she stumbled across something new. Maybe the bones will free the children and give everyone a chance to go home. Or maybe they'll unleash suffering unlike the world has ever seen. But here's the thing. If the bones were meaningless, why say anything at all? Why personally intervene? To me, the most important thing the man in yellow does in this scene is confirm that the bones do matter. The only thing he leaves uncertain is whether they'll help or they'll hurt. I'm not sure we should trust his warning, because if retrieving the bones wasn't important, I don't think the man in yellow would have gone through all of the trouble to discourage it. Which brings us to clue number 3, Jade's plans. Now, one detail from Jade's plan immediately stood out to me, the bottle tree. Because if all they needed was another exit out of the sacrificial chamber, there were easier ways to write that. Instead, the writer specifically chose a plan that requires the bottle tree to be pulled up out of the ground right at the same moment the children's bones are recovered. And that feels intentional, because the bottle tree has always been one of the most important objects in the entire series. It's connected to the children. It's connected to the lighthouse. It's connected to moving between places. And now it may play a role in helping people escape. But here's what really caught my attention. What's the very first thing every resident sees before becoming trapped in FROMVILLE? They see the fallen tree across the road. Now, 4 seasons later, Jade's plan revolves around removing another tree. And that's a fascinating parallel to me, because one tree marks the beginning of every person's journey into FROMVILLE, and the other tree may help end it. Or is it the same tree? But if FROMVILLE really is a system, then I don't think the writers chose that parallel by accident, because that is great storytelling if the thing that brings the people into the system may be connected to the thing that gets them out. Now, clue number 4 is Fatima's transformation. What's interesting is that when Fatima told Boyd and the others how she saved Kenny, she never mentioned the mud monster. And maybe it's unrelated, or maybe she doesn't realize it, but if the first time Fatima successfully controlled Smiley happened while she was touching the golem, I don't think that's a coincidence, because immediately afterward, her body went cold. Then she woke up with the dark varicose veins spread across her stomach. And what if there was a cost to using the connection? What if the golem isn't just helping Fatima feel safe? What if it's helping her strengthen her connection itself? And here's where things get interesting. We spent seasons watching characters like Jade and Tabitha experience visions, memories, and unexplained connections to people who came before them. Now look at what's happening to Fatima. She's sharing senses with Smiley. She's experiencing physical changes because of that connection. And after using it, her body literally starts changing. Now the details are vastly different, especially because Fatima's connection goes both ways, but the pattern feels strangely familiar. And I'm not saying that Fatima is turning into Smiley, though it does seem like she's turning into a monster based on her vitals. And I'm not even saying that the monsters reincarnate the same way that the humans might. But if Jade can be connected to Christopher and Tabitha can be connected to Miranda, then maybe Fatima's connection to Smiley isn't the exception. Maybe it's another version of the same phenomenon. And the more I think about it, the more I believe Fatima needs to be comparing notes with Jade and Tabitha. Because if it's true that Fatima touching the golem did help her control Smiley, I wonder what touching the golem can do for Jade and Miranda's visions. And clue number 5 is the peaches. When Victor is sharing his survival story from childhood and sharing tips with Ethan and Tabitha, Victor explains that after everyone died, that the boy in white brought him to the truck filled with canned peaches so he would have food. And that truck full of canned peaches kept Victor alive for years. And I think those peaches quietly reveal a small portion of how FROMVILLE works. Because here's the strange part. Before Victor ever arrived in FROMVILLE, his childhood bedroom had peaches on the wallpaper, or the borders rather. So why did the one food that kept Victor alive for decades happen to be something connected to his life before FROMVILLE? Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's another clue that FROMVILLE builds itself up based off of people's memories. After all, we've seen Tabitha's bracelet somehow recreated in town. We've seen nearly identical bottle trees in the real world and in FROMVILLE, And even on this episode, we see Henry's reaction to the jukebox playing Miranda's favorite song, Blue. So maybe that truck full of peaches wasn't random at all, because at some point you have to ask yourself whether the peaches were food or whether they were a memory that the town turned into a reality. And now we're moving on to the question section. Now, one thing that surprised me about this episode is how little attention was given to Kenny's actions from last week. Not only did Kenny put his life on the line, but the entire situation raised some pretty important questions that Boyd and them should be posing. For example, we didn't see them question how the monsters seemed to know about Boyd's plan to test whether the totem could kill one of them. And that feels like a detail that was worth discussing. And honestly, Kenny deserved a little recognition too. I would have loved to see the characters acknowledge what he did, or at very least spend some time unpacking what happened. I also think that a conversation should have been had between Kenny and Fatima, especially if Fatima is the one that saved Kenny. Now, my second question is about Henry. Did anyone else feel like Henry got too much screen time in this episode? Because this episode kept putting so much attention on Henry. And as I mentioned before, I am very suspicious of Henry. I think that he could have something to do with the creation of FROMVILLE, or he may work for FROMVILLE. But I really hope they move along with the storyline, because seeing Henry so much on the screen was just frustrating for me again. And I do not think that he's going to kill Victor no matter what. Even though the doctor told him that he needs to sever the anchor that's keeping him stuck in FROMVILLE, I highly doubt if Henry is going to kill his own son. If anything, he might turn around and kill Tabitha, aka Miranda, and I know some of you would love to see that. And speaking of suspicious people, did anyone else think that Christy was a little too quick to shut down Marielle's idea? We saw Marielle telling Fatima that maybe her new ability is a good thing and that it could be helpful to getting them home. And Christy was really upset with Marielle. And I'm like, Christy, do you want to go home or not? And this isn't the first time that I looked at Christy suspiciously. It's been several times where Christy is just so comfortable in FROMVILLE. She reacts less like someone trying to escape and more like someone trying to manage the situation that they're already in. What happened to Julie and her story walking? We didn't see Julie at all in this episode. I know Julie is getting frustrated because she thinks that the story walking wasn't working, but I think Julie's story walking was one of the most interesting parts of season 4. And last question, when the man in yellow was telling Tabitha that she's the best friend that he could ever have, or he said something to that effect, you're the closest thing to a friend I ever had. That's what I think he said. Did any of you think of Donna? For some reason, my mind went directly to Donna in a conversation she had with Tabitha at the settlement, when she told Tabitha that Tabitha wouldn't have to risk her life anymore. And Donna was telling Tabitha that she has her back. I guess in a nutshell, what I was trying to figure out from that conversation, from the man in yellow and Tabitha, is who is Tabitha's friend right now. And the only real friend I could think of is Donna. And I know that the man in yellow could have been talking about many cycles ago, and it might not be somebody that we currently see on screen. But I don't know. I just think it's worth it for me to mention, because that immediately came to my mind. Like, wait a minute, what's going on? Because Donna is Tabitha's friend, and the man in yellow is saying that she's the closest thing that he's ever had to a friend. Like, somehow is the man in yellow Donna? Anyway, guys, I know that's a real confusing rant right there, but that's just a little bit of raw and uncut. But nonetheless, guys, if you made it this far in a video, please drop me down a purple heart down below. And as always, let me know your clues, your theories. Did you enjoy this episode or not? I am also covering Widow's Bay on Apple TV. That season finale comes out this week. And then July 3rd, I will be covering the next season of Silo. So make sure you're all caught up with Silo so you can watch that show with me too. But that's all I have for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. And until next time, you guys stay safe out there. Peace.